Australia is facing serious trouble, and not just from kangaroos on the highway or another bout of extreme weather. According to recent climate and urban development studies, as many as 10 major Australian cities could be heading towards severe decline as early as 2025. We are talking about rising sea levels swallowing coastal suburbs, housing markets under extreme pressure, water shortages, widespread power outages, and even large-scale population displacement. Yes, that is correct. Entire communities could be forced to leave the cities they have called home for generations. You might assume that cities like Sydney or Melbourne are simply too big to fail. That was the common belief, until the data started telling a very different story. Cities once seen as safe, stable, and highly livable are now being labelled high-risk zones by urban planners and environmental experts. So what is actually going wrong? Is climate change the sole culprit, or is there more happening beneath the surface? Overcrowding, failing infrastructure, increasingly frequent natural disasters, and years of political inaction are all colliding at once, and time is running out. In this video, we will break down 10 Australian cities that are teetering on the edge, explain what is really happening behind the scenes, and why experts believe 2025 could be a tipping point. Stay with us. Some of these cities may surprise you, and if you live in one of them, this could be your wake-up call. 1. Sydney, Decades. Australia's iconic harbour city, famous for its skyline, beaches and vibrant lifestyle, may not look like a city in crisis, but beneath the glossy surface, Sydney is facing challenges on an enormous scale. The city is edging closer to serious decline, and it is not just about rising sea levels or the occasional flash flood. Sydney's problems are rooted in relentless population growth, ageing infrastructure, and a housing crisis that threatens to turn one of the world's most desirable cities into a place that is no longer sustainable. With the population growing by roughly 1,000 new residents every week, Sydney's infrastructure is being pushed well beyond its limits. Roads are permanently clogged, public transport is packed to capacity, and the cost of living continues to climb at an alarming rate. Over the past decade, the average house price has nearly doubled, placing home ownership well out of reach for many Australians. And housing is only part of the problem. Sydney faces increasing flood risks that could affect millions of people. Experts warn that rising sea levels could inundate sections of the coastline, including well-known areas such as Bondi Beach and Circular Quay. At the same time, the shortage of genuinely affordable housing is worsening, contributing to rising homelessness across the city. Sydney's power grid is also under strain. As temperatures continue to rise, heat waves are becoming more frequent and more intense, placing enormous pressure on outdated energy systems. Without significant changes to urban planning, infrastructure investment and resource management, Sydney's long-term future is increasingly uncertain. So what can Sydney do to pull itself back from the brink? We will explore possible solutions later in the video. 2. Melbourne. Melbourne, often regarded as Australia's cultural capital, is celebrated for its cafe culture, art scene, and famously unpredictable weather. But do not let the city's charm distract you from what lies ahead. Melbourne is heading toward a crisis that could turn its lively streets into an unbearable furnace. In the coming years, extreme heat waves are expected to become the new normal, pushing infrastructure, essential services, and residents to their limits. The city is well known for experiencing 4 seasons in one day, but what experts are forecasting is far more severe. By 2025, Melbourne is expected to face increasingly intense heat waves, with record-breaking temperatures that could make outdoor life dangerously difficult. Heat-related illnesses and deaths are already rising, and this trend is only accelerating. As urban heat islands continue to expand, areas where concrete and buildings trap heat far more than surrounding regions, conditions will become even harsher. This could push Melbourne toward being one of the least livable major cities in the country. And the heat is not the only concern. Melbourne's transport network is already notorious for congestion. As population growth continues, gridlock across the city is expected to worsen, further straining an already overburdened system. Commuter chaos could soon become the new normal, leaving Melburnians stuck in traffic for hours on end. Add to that the growing flood risk caused by a swelling Yarra River, and it becomes clear that Melbourne's infrastructure is rapidly aging and increasingly overstretched. So what does Melbourne need to do to avoid becoming an oppressive, unlivable city? Can it adapt quickly enough, or will it be left grappling with a future that is simply too hot to handle? Stay with us as we examine whether Melbourne still has a chance to turn things around, or if the window is already closing. 3. Brisbane, the sun-soaked capital of Queensland, is well known for its relaxed lifestyle and love of the outdoors. But the outlook for this fast-growing city is far less optimistic than it appears on the surface. Facing the dual threats of flooding and rapid population growth, Brisbane is edging toward a crisis that could leave it barely recognisable by 2025. Flooding is nothing new for Brisbane. The devastating floods of 2011 are still fresh in the minds of many locals. However, climate change is expected to make these events far more severe, with stronger and more frequent storms increasing the risk of widespread inundation across the region. Rising sea levels could also submerge low-lying parts of the city, including well-known areas such as South Bank and Fortitude Valley, potentially placing thousands of homes and businesses underwater. At the same time, Brisbane's population is booming. The city is expected to grow by nearly 500,000 people over the next decade, placing enormous pressure on infrastructure that is already struggling to keep up. Roads, public transport networks, and essential services are being pushed to their limits. With so many people moving to Brisbane in search of work and lifestyle opportunities, the housing market is under intense strain. Property prices continue to rise, and rental availability is tightening, leaving many residents unable to secure affordable housing. Can Brisbane tackle the combined challenges of flooding and overcrowding before it reaches a breaking point? Or is this once thriving city already drowning in its own growth? Stay with us as we explore what must be done to pull Brisbane back from the brink. 4. Perth, Australia's isolated western capital, has long been admired for its easygoing lifestyle and pristine beaches. But beneath that relaxed image, the city is facing a serious existential challenge driven by water scarcity and economic uncertainty. One of the greatest threats to Perth's future is prolonged drought. Water levels in the city's reservoirs have fallen to critically low levels, with experts warning that traditional water sources could be exhausted as early as 2025. Climate change is expected to further reduce rainfall, reinforcing Perth's status as one of the driest capital cities in the country. To compensate, the city has become increasingly dependent on desalination plants. While these facilities provide a vital supply of fresh water, they are costly to operate and difficult to sustain over the long term. Compounding the problem is Perth's heavy reliance on mining and resource extraction. These industries, once the backbone of the local economy, are beginning to slow as global demand shifts and renewable energy alternatives gain traction. An economic downturn could leave thousands of workers without jobs. As employment opportunities dry up, Perth may face a population decline, with residents moving interstate in search of work. This potential exodus would place even greater pressure on the city's already fragile economic and social systems. Can Perth adapt to these mounting challenges, or is it heading toward a future where drought and economic instability make everyday life increasingly difficult? Stay with us as we assess whether Perth can push back, or whether the city is approaching a grim turning point. 5. Adelaide, once a strong cultural and industrial centre, is now facing a future filled with uncertainty. An ageing population, declining industries, and a weakening economy have pushed the city into a slow-burning crisis, one that could threaten its long-term viability in the decades ahead. One of the biggest challenges Adelaide is facing is a shrinking workforce. The city's population is ageing rapidly, and as the baby boomer generation moves into retirement, demand for healthcare and aged care services is surging. At the same time, Adelaide is experiencing a steady brain drain, with younger Australians leaving for better job prospects in larger cities such as Sydney and Melbourne. This loss of talent is weakening the local economy and creating a shortage of skilled workers in critical sectors. Adelaide's economy, once underpinned by manufacturing and defence, has been in decline for years. Major employers have shut down or moved interstate, and the city has struggled to attract new industries capable of replacing the jobs that have disappeared. The outcome is rising unemployment, sluggish economic growth, and increasing levels of financial stress across the community. With the city's economic future looking increasingly uncertain, many fear that Adelaide could lose relevance on the national stage. Without a significant shift in economic strategy, Adelaide risks becoming one of the first Australian cities to experience serious economic collapse, marked by a stagnant workforce and limited prospects for long-term growth. So can Adelaide turn things around before it is too late? Stay with us as we explore what must change if the city is to avoid sliding into long-term decline. 6. Darwin. Darwin, the tropical capital of the Northern Territory, is often seen as a relaxed paradise, known for its natural beauty and strategic proximity to Asia. However, behind the laid-back lifestyle, Darwin is emerging as one of Australia's most vulnerable cities. The combined threats of cyclones and rising sea levels are pushing the city toward a potential tipping point, and there is a genuine risk that Darwin could struggle to remain viable as we move closer to 2025. Its location within the tropical cyclone zone makes the city especially exposed to severe weather. In the past, Darwin has endured destructive cyclones, but climate change is making these storms stronger, more frequent, and far less predictable. Experts warn that rising global temperatures will increase the intensity of cyclones affecting the region, placing homes, infrastructure, and the local economy under growing pressure. And cyclones are only part of the problem. Rising sea levels pose a serious threat to large sections of Darwin's coastline, including major tourist areas and critical infrastructure. Low-lying precincts such as the Darwin waterfront and Cullen Bay are particularly at risk of inundation. If these areas are flooded, thousands of residents could be forced to relocate, triggering significant economic and social disruption. Darwin is also facing mounting economic challenges. The city has traditionally relied on mining activity and defence spending, but both sectors are beginning to show signs of contraction. Job losses are increasing, and there are growing concerns about whether Darwin's economic base is strong enough to withstand the combined pressures of climate change and industry decline. Can Darwin adapt to an increasingly hostile environment, or will it be overwhelmed by the very forces that once helped it grow? Stay with us as we examine how this at-risk city might fight for its survival. 7. Hobart. Hobart, the picturesque capital of Tasmania, is often seen as a peaceful escape, celebrated for its natural scenery and slower pace of life. Yet beneath the city's charm lies a growing crisis. As climate pressures and economic isolation intensify, Hobart is struggling to keep pace with the demands of a rapidly changing world. One of the city's most significant challenges is its geographic isolation. Positioned at Australia's southern edge, Hobart is increasingly cut off from mainland supply chains, investment, and employment opportunities. Transport links between Hobart and major mainland cities are limited, and rising fuel costs and shipping delays are making this isolation more acute. As global trade becomes more dependent on fast and reliable logistics, Hobart's limited access to essential goods and services threatens to leave the city behind, both economically and socially. Hobart also faces serious climate-related risks. Agriculture, a cornerstone of Tasmania's economy, is particularly vulnerable to drought, flooding, and temperature extremes. The region has already experienced declining agricultural yields, and experts warn these challenges will intensify as weather patterns become increasingly unpredictable. As Tasmania grapples with its own food security challenges, Hobart could soon find itself competing for increasingly limited resources. Economically, the city is also feeling the pressure from declining industries and a lack of diversification. With fewer local job opportunities and a narrow economic base, many young Tasmanians are leaving in search of better prospects on the mainland. Hobart's heavy reliance on tourism and small-scale industries makes it particularly vulnerable to global shocks and economic downturns. The question is whether Hobart can carve out a more resilient future, or whether it will continue to struggle against isolation, climate pressures, and economic uncertainty. Stay with us as we examine what Hobart can do to avoid long-term stagnation and decline. 8. Canberra. Canberra, the nation's political centre, is facing a surprisingly uncertain future despite its central role in government. While it is often viewed as one of Australia's most stable cities, mounting political instability and growing resource constraints could push Canberra toward a breaking point by 2025. What happens in Canberra matters not only to its residents, but to the entire country. One of the most significant challenges confronting the city is ongoing political turbulence. Frequent leadership changes, shifting policy priorities, and prolonged periods of parliamentary deadlock have made it difficult to implement long-term, sustainable solutions. Key issues such as housing affordability, urban sprawl, and climate resilience have repeatedly been delayed or watered down. This constant state of political flux has led to stagnation rather than innovation. Instead of forward planning, policy responses are often short-term and reactive, leaving the city ill-prepared for future challenges. Canberra is also facing serious resource pressures. As one of Australia's smaller capital cities, its limited natural resources are being stretched by steady population growth. Water supplies, energy networks, and public services are all under increasing strain. Prolonged droughts linked to climate change have further reduced water availability, compounding these challenges. Infrastructure that was once considered modern is now aging and struggling to meet demand. At the same time, Canberra's economy remains heavily dependent on government and defence-related employment. This leaves the city exposed to shifts in federal funding and policy direction. If major budget cuts or departmental relocations occur, Canberra could face significant job losses, placing further pressure on an already fragile economic structure. Can the city overcome these political and resource challenges, or will it remain caught in a cycle of instability and scarcity? Stay with us as we explore what must change to secure Canberra's future. 9. Gold Coast. The Gold Coast, often described as Australia's playground, is famous for its golden beaches, booming tourism sector, and aspirational lifestyle. Yet behind the glossy image lies a city facing mounting challenges that threaten its long-term viability. The Gold Coast's economy is overwhelmingly reliant on tourism, a dependence that is becoming increasingly risky. An industry once fueled by international visitors chasing sun and surf has grown more volatile in recent years. Global travel disruptions, changing travel habits, and rising concerns about the environmental impact of large-scale resort developments have exposed cracks in the city's tourism-driven model. The question is simple but confronting. What happens when visitor numbers fall, or when the environmental cost of constant development becomes unsustainable? Overdevelopment along the coastline has already taken a heavy toll. As population growth and demand for high-end living continue, large sections of the natural coastline have been replaced by high-rise towers, shopping precincts, and dense urban developments. This rapid expansion has come at the expense of natural ecosystems, leading to biodiversity loss, increased pollution, and accelerating coastal erosion. More importantly, the city's infrastructure can no longer keep pace with demand. This has led to worsening traffic congestion, stretched public services, and soaring property prices that are forcing locals out of the very communities they grew up in. What happens when the once booming tourism sector begins to slow, the environmental cost becomes impossible to ignore, and the Gold Coast can no longer sustain a model built on endless development? Stay with us as we explore what must change to protect the Gold Coast for future generations. 10. Wollongong, once a major industrial stronghold in New South Wales, is now confronting an uncertain future as it struggles with economic decline, lingering pollution, and the long-term effects of deindustrialisation. Known for decades as the heart of Australia's steel industry, the city is still dealing with the fallout from factory closures and the loss of jobs that once formed the backbone of its economy. For generations, Wollongong's identity was tied to heavy industry, particularly the Port Kembla Steelworks. But as the global economy shifts toward cleaner and more sustainable industries, many of these facilities have become outdated and increasingly unviable. The closure of major plants has driven unemployment higher, leaving many locals struggling to find secure, well-paid work. The manufacturing jobs that once supported the city have not been adequately replaced. While there has been some growth in service and technology sectors, these opportunities have failed to offset the scale of job losses or reverse the broader economic slowdown. Wollongong is also burdened by the environmental legacy of its industrial past. Despite ongoing cleanup efforts, pollution remains a serious concern. Air quality issues and water contamination continue to pose health risks for residents, highlighting the long-term consequences of decades of heavy industry. Without meaningful economic diversification and a decisive shift toward cleaner industries, Wollongong may find it difficult to regain its footing in a rapidly changing economy. As traditional industries fade and environmental damage lingers, the question remains, can Wollongong reinvent itself, or will it become another casualty of Australia's post-industrial transition? Stay with us as we examine whether Wollongong can chart a new path forward or whether the city is already sliding toward collapse. As we have seen, Australia's future is far from guaranteed. From rising sea levels to economic instability, these 10 cities are facing pressures that could reshape their futures. The reality of what is at stake is difficult to ignore. The decline of these cities is not a distant possibility. It is a looming crisis with the potential to affect millions of Australians. Addressing these issues openly is not easy. Confronting uncomfortable truths about our cities, our environment, and our economy requires honesty and persistence. But these conversations matter. The future of our cities deserves attention, and that is why this channel exists, to ensure these challenges are seen, discussed, and taken seriously. If you care about Australia's cities, the environment, and the future we are building together, consider subscribing to the channel. It is a simple action, but it helps keep these important discussions going. This channel aims to inform, challenge, and, where possible, inspire change. Your support genuinely makes a difference. If this topic matters to you, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss future content. And if you have strong views on the fate of these cities, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of this conversation. Let's keep pushing for change, one video at a time.